All right, so later I'm going to have to go and, get a haircut and all that stuff. But wanted to do a video talking about the the government shutdown, but not really directly in terms of what you are thinking. Some people want me to do a video that kind of talks about Trump and the border wall or political opinions or what have you or any of that type of stuff. And really, you're not going to get that kind of out of me. I've kind of touched on it a little bit on Patreon, just my overall opinion. But this video does talk about the 800,000 folks, federal workers that are out of a job. Hold on one second. Okay, I'm back. I had to stop all of the notification things because it's early in the morning, so I'm going to get a ton of them. But I wanted to do this really quick because I'm watching the news and they're talking about all the folks that are being up, because now I think it's day 26 of the government shutdown. So today is, what is today? Wednesday? Yeah, today's Wednesday, the 16th. And so, back in the day, I used to be a contractor for a federal government agency. And the way that, and so I kind of understand a little bit, but I wasn't a direct government employee. We got some of the benefits. Like when you look at like health insurance, it was amazing. Like I could go and get anything done, and really the what's it called that you have to pay was only like 20 bucks, 25 bucks. And so when I met Noelle and she would say, oh, I got to go to the doctor or what have you, or she had to go to the doctor. She's like, I know the bill's going to be high. And I'm like, it won't be. Because our copay is only 25, like going to be 20 to 25 bucks. Now, obviously, if it's something big, it's going to be much more, but it wasn't really that much. I mean, it was amazing. Even when when she gave birth to Zoe, it was expensive because Zoe had to be in the hospital because Noelle had to do a C-section. And she didn't want to give a C-section. She wanted to have a natural birth, but they were saying, time is starting to tick down, and you're affecting your health as well as the baby and all this stuff. And that was true. So finally, Noelle said, sure, let's do it. Well, Zoe had to be in NICU because she was really, she was just having a hard time breathing and all that type of stuff. So it was expensive, right? It was really expensive. But the bill ended up being hardly anything. I forget how expensive it was. It was a lot of money. It was over 20 grand. But it ended up being less than that. Much, 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 much less than that. So I understand the insurance part. It was great back in the day. The pay was great. It was nice. I mean, that was when I said I was making a lot of money. That was back then. But so I understand the difference was that we had contracts that were agreed and approved beforehand. So yeah, Congress approved a lot of things and did a lot of things in terms of, like, if you have a government contract, they basically say budget year, this is how much this agency is going to get. That agency then says, okay, this is how much we're going to give to our contractors, and everything's good. When a shutdown like this happens, it depends on when it happens as opposed to whether or not contractors get paid. If they've already agreed to the contract and the money has already been set aside for it, you're good. If they haven't, and they haven't reviewed the contract yet, and given that's the beginning of the year, that's a problem. If it was several months into the year, it'd be different because it's already probably approved. If it's at the very beginning of the year, which it has been, I mean, it started last year, then that could be a problem for some. I didn't work on the contract part. I wasn't like, program manager or anything like that, so I don't know. But I was an operations supervisor, so I mean, I kind of had an idea as to how some of it worked, but I just didn't know that. I mean, they didn't tell me the details. But that's how it is for a lot of contractors, and some of those folks are not going to get. If you're a contractor, you don't get paid. Like if it hasn't been approved, so there's benefits. If you're a federal employee, you're not going to get paid, but eventually you'll get the money. You still have to work. If you're a contractor, a lot of the contractors, you don't have to come in a lot of times, but you end up losing you could lose your job, because if you're not working, then you're going to have to use a lot of your time, vacation time, sick leave, whatever. And eventually, once you run out, you're out of luck, unless the group that you're working for, the organization or the company that you're working for, has some sort of provision in there to help you. You could possibly lose your job, right? And you don't get paid for it. So if you don't, because if the contract's not getting paid for it, you don't get paid for it. So a lot of these people, if, for example, let's say the agency I worked for, and they didn't get a contract approved, so the company never got paid, then they're going to say, look, our office is closed, right? So nobody's coming in to work, office is closed. So unlike a federal employee where they have to go in, like TSA agents, they have to go in and actually work regardless of whether they get paid or not. Eventually they get the money, however long it takes. But if a contract wasn't approved for a contractor, then they're not going to open the doors. It's basically shut down. And so you're not getting paid that entire time. We're talking 26 days, almost a month. I mean, that is insane. And they never are going to get that. I mean, they're not going to get anything. So to me, I think of the people who are being impacted. 800,000 people. But when you think about that, some of these are, I mean, people don't do the multiplier effect. That could be 800,000 families. That could be, and when you talk about families, what if they're the sole breadwinner? You know what I mean? Then look how many people are being impacted. If they have a family of 5, look how many people in the multiplying effect. Then look at local businesses. That's something else. The things that really fascinate me, or something that I'm really interested in, is small business. I used to be all about big companies and all that, but after working for a lot of big companies, I mean, they're cool, but like, I really and truly put a lot of stock in small businesses because they really propel the economy. They really do a lot for not only the local economy, but for the national economy. But then anyway, a lot of those small businesses are impacted because people can't, I mean, if people aren't working, they're not going to go out to the eateries, and they're not going to go and spend money because they can't. So it's basically trickling all over the place. It's impacting a lot of people. And a lot of these places, these restaurants and vendors and things like that, have to cut back hours. So that 800,000 is not an accurate number. It's an accurate number for federal employees, but it's much bigger than that, because there's other businesses and organizations that also have to adjust because they're not getting the flow. There are some places, some cities, where the vast majority of their work, or vast majority of the workforce, works for the federal government. And so imagine what that's doing to the economy. So me, I think about, and regardless of someone's political viewpoints and all that nonsense, I don't really care. I mean, there could be people out there who hate everything I stand for, and that's fine. I mean, I don't care. But I still care about them if they are basically out of work, right? Because it doesn't help anybody. Like, the number of people that this is impacting doesn't help anyone at all. And it's not right that people are having, I mean, for one, a lot of people's Christmas was impacted. Okay. But now it's affecting people. This one woman said that she's going to have to end up selling her car. She has enough money now saved up to pay her mortgage. But then after that, in order to cover her mortgage, she's going to have to sell her car. And that's just one story out of many. And so to me, it's like, this is beyond ridiculous. And one of the reasons why I said that I am not a part of any sort of political party, because there's too much. For one, it's a huge power imbalance, right? We don't really, once a person's elected, we can't really control their actions. We can't. And we're too busy as a population fighting over who's Republican, who's Democrat, and who's liberal, and who's conservative, and all that stuff that really and truly, when you think about it, doesn't matter. It's just a name. You have politicians who flip and change political parties all the time. It's not just Trump and it's not just Bloomberg, but there are people who change parties all the time in terms of where they once were and where they are today and all of that. These folks, a lot of them are friends, even though they're on two different political, they're friends, and at the end of the day, they don't have to really worry about a paycheck. These are millionaires, a lot of these people. So it's not, to me, I don't see why we have to sit and you can see when you go to any YouTube channel that has the news, you'll see people in the comments just sitting there jockeying back and forth and dogging each other and talking about each other and all this stuff. And at the end of the day, that's not what's important. It's not. And I think that we have to look at the human factor of this and not at the political factor, because that's not what's important. The human factor of this is kids that, and keep in mind too, there are lower income kids who rely on discounted lunch or free lunch, and that's going to impact them. I mean, so this is, to me, and the longer it goes, the longer this shutdown goes, the more it affects other agencies. So it's no longer a partial shutdown, it becomes a much bigger one. And so that many more families are impacted. And so to me, it's not about the wall, no wall, for a wall, none of that nonsense. To me, it's about the individual people and families who are impacted by something that's really not in their control. And I don't care how that person voted or not. To me, I mean, that's a separate argument, I should say. Some people say, you know what, hey, they voted for him, so I have no sympathy for those people. I get where some people are coming from in terms of that. But when you think about the fact that there are people who are losing their homes, when you think about the fact there are kids who are going to be massively impacted by it, and economies in different cities are impacted by it, it goes a little bit above and beyond something like that. I think it should be a lesson learned for a lot of people, that you should definitely try to take more control over your own destiny a little bit more. And what I mean by that is, I'm not blaming anyone for their circumstance, but what I'm saying is that one of the things that I learned was I can't trust anybody. I can't trust any employer, because a company today will pat you on your shoulder and say, you know, you're doing a great job. And then 2 months later, a layoff happens and you're out the door, but the people who are at the very top are good. You know what I mean? Like, the people who do all the work and they can pay you a little bit of money, they're the ones that suffer. The ones who are, you know, mid-management, and sometimes not even them, upper management and executives, they're good. Doesn't matter to them. They're still going to be sitting good. So I don't trust the government. I don't trust businesses. I don't trust any of that. Because you never know when they're going to pull the rug out from under you. And so it's like, a lot of times I see people and I talk about not living above your means for that reason. I've went through layoffs. I've worked for companies, I'm like, there's no way they're going to do a layoff, or they're not going to cut positions. These are some of the biggest companies, and yet they do. And so, and it's not that they have to sometimes. A lot of times they do that just because they want to have a better financial position when it comes to their portfolio, when it comes to acquiring another company. They may do a lot of layoffs so they can have extra cash to do something like that. And it's like, these are things that impact people who have a mortgage, who have a car payment, who have tuition to pay, or have tons of bills. Creditors aren't going to just say, well, you know, it's cool, bro, don't worry about it. They want their money. You know what I mean? They want their money. I have properties that I rent out. And if my tenant says, you know, I can't pay, what am I supposed to say? That's cool? No, like I need that money because I have to put that back into the property. So to me, I think that folks that are in such a high position a lot of times ignore the human factor. And the longer something like this goes on, the more it impacts more and more people. And it also just depresses people in general. You know what I mean? Like it weighs on people's minds. So now it's no longer some of these other things that they can, spend their time worrying about. It's about living. Having to sell your car or some of these people are being evicted. That shouldn't happen. That should not happen. So I think that, it's one of those things where we have to, again, I always try to have a plan B or C or D. If you can. Some people can't, and that's understandable, Some people can't prepare for the future because they're just barely trying to make it. Some people aren't living above their means. They're just trying to make it. So, to me, I have a lot of sympathy for that. I have a lot of sympathy for the people in this country in terms of, and I'm talking about the working folks and poor. I have a lot of sympathy for those folks because of the simple fact that typically decisions aren't made for those folks. It's not. Decisions are not made for the middle class and the poor in terms of trying to really help them. When you really, really think about it, you put all of your bias aside and you really stop and think about it deep. Think about it. Decisions aren't made to really help you. For the most part, it's done to help either that business, when they do a lot of the things they do, it's done to help that business and to help those at the very top. Or when it comes to politics, it's done to help that person stay in politics or to help them further along in life. A lot of these folks have speaking engagements. How many people who are watching this can go and say, you know what, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go and do speaking engagements and get paid $300,000 a speech? I mean, but the politicians can. All of them. Because of the position that they've held. So it's like they can easily, once they leave, whether they're a senator, or House of Representatives, president, whatever, they can leave office and still make bank for life. You can't. So it's like, to me, I look at that and I think about it, because I used to get into that whole squabble too. And then I realized, like, wait a second, that's kind of the whole point. That's the whole point of politics, is for us to fight so that you don't pay attention to what's really going on behind the scenes. We're too busy sitting here being tribal. We're tribal about a lot of stuff, and we really don't think about what's going on. We're not keeping our eyes on our front door because we're too busy fighting inside the house. Meanwhile, you're getting robbed, and you know what I mean? You're getting robbed, and you're still like, let's go back to this fight that we're having. And so that's, to me, is what we need to focus on. Stop focusing so much on, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green, whatever. The focus should be on individual policies and holding people accountable. That is what, and I agree with term limits too. Because there are people who are in office who's been there my whole entire life. I'm going to be 41 this month. My entire life, there's people who have been in Congress. Some who's been in there longer than that. Much longer. That shouldn't be. We're not the same country we were back 42, 43, 50 years ago. We're not. Things have changed. Mindsets and all that stuff has changed. The world has shifted. And we still have people who are extremely old, and there's really no place for that. Somebody made this comment that when Zuckerberg was actually in, speaking to the folks at Congress, that a lot of the folks there who are all old, not all, but a lot of them were, they didn't really have the right questions to ask. They were so out of touch And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm out of touch with things too. I used to think back in the day, like electronics and stuff. I'm like, man, this stuff's easy. My mom's like, I don't know how to. I'm like, this is easy. Now, I can't even really operate my phone that well. You know what I mean? Like, there's things I'm like, I don't know. Like, I have to sit and think, like, I don't know how to really do. So there comes a point in time where technology, and I see people all the time, I have to look up a lot of stuff on YouTube on how-tos because a lot of people today, younger folks, even Zoe, I mean, like with Minecraft and stuff, she can find a whole bunch of stuff, do a whole bunch of stuff. I'm like, I've been playing it a little bit, but I didn't know you could do that. So my point is that you have someone who, like a Mark Zuckerberg, who's like a pioneer. And then you have people who have absolutely no clue. They know what Facebook is. They know how to post some stuff, but they really don't have the questions to ask the guy because they're so out of touch. And I think we need to have younger people definitely in Congress. But that means you have to have term limits because you have some people who have sat there forever and it's like, oh, I've been here forever. I have a history of doing this and I've done this and done that. It's hard to compete with someone who's had 40 years of experience and then you have someone who has just nothing. And they're trying to come in and compete against that. It's hard. So I think that term limits should be there because of the simple fact you need to get rid of some of the old thinking and thoughts and processes. And I think that we should have more people in there that pretty much represents the country as it is today, regardless of how their views are, how extreme or whatever the case may be. That stuff kind of weeds itself out. But it's hard when you have, and even in my hometown, there was a sheriff who had been there since the 60s. And I mean, I never knew any different. I thought that sheriffs had a lifetime job because I'm like, oh, I didn't think that they were elected like that. I thought they were just hired and they have a lifetime. But no, finally they got him out of there. And they have a new guy. And I'm like, this is crazy. So that type, to me, it's like there shouldn't be someone who sits at a position, and that's different for a sheriff, I guess. But when we're talking about the federal government, even state, there shouldn't be someone who stays there forever. I mean, we can't have a president that's there forever. You know what I mean? Like they can't just keep going and going and going and going and going. So, I mean, there's a reason for that. So I think that with something like this, it should be a wake-up call. That we say, you know what, yep, term limits, definitely, that should be something that we should do. Now, that wouldn't have stopped this, necessarily. But at the same time, it's like, we need to have fresh faces. Because a lot of things that are going on, the stalemates and a lot of the stuff that's happening, is because these are people who know how to play the system. They do. They've been there forever. They know the little tricks. They've created half of them. So it's like they know the tricks. But the people who hurt the most are not Trump and Pelosi and Schumer and Lindsey Graham. Those people are good. This doesn't... You can have a shutdown for a century and it's not going to impact those people. The people who are affected are you and I. Doesn't matter what your political party is. Doesn't matter male, female. Doesn't matter if you're black or white. Doesn't matter. None of that matters. What matters is that you and I are the ones who basically suffer at the end of the day. And that should be your focus and not based on what party you're in. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this video. You know, God bless the people who are drastically impacted by this right now. Hopefully this gets solved rather quickly rather than much later. Because it's just not right. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.